life of Edgar Degas. In Paris, under the July sun of 1834, a child was born into a home filled with art, music, and culture. Here in the heart of the Faubourg Saint-Germain, young Edgar was raised in a world where the clink of fine china mingled with the strokes of paint on canvas. His father, a wealthy banker, and his American mother, whose love for art was as profound as her French heritage, surrounded him with beauty. The walls of his home were adorned with classical works, and the sounds of opera and piano filled the rooms. From a very young age, Edgar was drawn to the sketches and paintings that graced his environment, his eyes wide with wonder at each brushstroke he witnessed. His mother, who cherished her time with him, nurtured this curiosity, though her life was tragically cut short when Edgar was only 13. With his mother's departure, the young boy found solace in his art. His father, seeing the spark of talent, supported Edgar's studies, though initially directing him towards law. But the law could not hold his heart. It was the art that called to him. Thus, he was sent to study under Louis Lamothe, a master of line and form, who taught him the virtues of drawing with precision, much like Ingres, Lamothe's own teacher. In the hallowed halls of the École des Beaux-Arts, Edgar absorbed knowledge like a sponge, but he was restless for more. He traveled to Italy, where the Renaissance masters spoke to him through their timeless works. Here, under the Tuscan sun and the shadows of Rome, he honed his craft, his sketches capturing the life and light of the ancient city. Back in Paris, amidst the chatter of cafes and the clatter of carriages, Edgar found his true calling. The city was changing, modernity was on the rise, and with it, a new way of seeing. He began to paint the everyday, the dancers, the laundresses, the horses at the races. His palette was vibrant, his technique innovative, capturing movement and light in ways that were both new and old at once. As the sun set on his early years, Edgar Degas had already begun to carve a niche for himself in the art world. He was not just painting, he was telling stories through his art, stories of his time, of Paris, of life in all its mundane and magical moments. And thus his journey as one of the great Impressionists had begun, though he would always see himself as something more, a realist, capturing the essence of the world around him, one brushstroke at a time. In the quiet of his studio, the air was thick with the scent of oil paint and turpentine. Here, where the light filtered through tall windows, casting a dance of its own across the walls, Edgar Degas set his easel. The room was silent, save for the gentle scratch of his brush against canvas. He worked with the patience of one who knows the fleeting nature of the moment. His subjects, ballerinas poised in pirouettes or caught in the midst of a plie, were not mere figures, but stories of grace and discipline. Degas observed them at the Paris Opera, where he would watch from the wings, his sketchbook always in hand, capturing the essence of movement. Back in his studio, he would begin with rough outlines, his charcoal strokes bold yet precise. Each line was a study of motion, each shadow a dance of light and dark. He would mix his colors on the palette, choosing hues that whispered of the stage's magic. Soft pinks, muted greens, the deep blues of twilight performances. He painted with an intimacy that only comes from years of observation. Degas would focus on the tension in a dancer's arm, the curve of a back, the delicate arch of a foot. His brush would dance across the canvas, sometimes swiftly, sometimes with deliberate slowness, capturing not just the body, but the spirit of ballet. He often chose unusual angles, as if the viewer was peering through a keyhole into this sacred world. From above, behind, or to the side, his compositions revealed the mundane beauty of rehearsal, the tying of ribbons, the adjustment of a tutu, the wariness mixed with the joy of dance. Pastels would later come into play, allowing him to layer colors with a lightness that oil could not match. He'd blend them with his fingers, creating soft transitions that mirrored the fluidity of dance. His technique was innovative, his approach to painting dancers revolutionary, showing them not in their moments of glory on stage, but in their raw, unguarded moments backstage. As the day waned, the light in his studio would change, and so would his painting. The dancers on his canvas would seem to come alive under the setting sun, their movements eternalized in a moment that was both here and gone. Each painting was a ballet of its own, a silent performance witnessed only by the walls of his studio, where the dance never truly ended. In the heart of Montmartre, where the cobblestone streets echoed with the laughter of artists and the clinking of café glasses, Degas would venture out, his mind buzzing with images of pirouettes and pliés. He'd walk through the narrow lanes, past the Moulin Rouge, where the night was just beginning to stir. The Café de la Nouvelle Athènes was his destination, a haven where the avant-garde gathered under the glow of gas lamps. Here, amidst the chatter and smoke, Degas found his tribe, the Impressionists. The air was rich with the aroma of strong coffee and tobacco, the walls adorned with sketches and posters, a testament to the art that lived and breathed within these walls. He would take his usual seat, his portfolio tucked under his arm, the weight of his work a comforting presence. As he settled, the familiar faces of Monet, Renoir, and Pissarro would nod in welcome. The conversation would flow like the Seine, touching on the light of the day, the colors of the sunset, and then, inevitably, to art. Degas would unfasten his portfolio, revealing his latest studies of dancers. The pages were alive with movement, the subtle tension of a dancer's pose, the grace of a leap, the candid moments of rehearsal. He'd speak of the lines, the forms, how he captured the essence of movement with pastels, with oils, with his very soul. The others would lean in, their eyes tracing the strokes, their minds digesting the innovation. Monet might muse on the play of light, Renoir on the warmth of flesh and color, while Pissarro would ponder the social context of these young dancers. They'd discuss composition, technique, the very philosophy of capturing life's fleeting moments. There was debate, there was laughter, and sometimes a heated exchange over the essence of Impressionism itself. Degas would defend his realism, his focus on the human form, the dance of shadow and light. He'd share his frustrations, his triumphs, the way he saw the ballet not as performance, but as life, raw and unadorned. As the night deepened and the wine flowed, they'd sketch on napkins, argue over brush techniques, and dream of exhibitions where their works would challenge the salon's norms. Here, in this café, under the watchful gaze of Montmartre's bohemian spirit, Degas found camaraderie, critique, and the courage to push his art further. And when the last candle was blown out, leaving only the echo of their discussions, Degas would step back into the night, his mind alight with new ideas, his heart full from the kinship of fellow artists. The journey back to his studio would be one of silent contemplation, the streets of Montmartre now quiet, but his paintings of dancers would dance on in his mind, ready for another day's work. He walked with a purpose, his steps measured, his eyes always searching for the next moment to immortalize. His character was like his palette, rich with layers, some colors muted, others bold. There was a sharpness to him, an edge like the charcoal he favored that could both create beauty or cut through conversation with biting critique. Degas had a reputation for being irritable, his humor dry and often at someone else's expense. Yet beneath this crusty exterior, there was a man who cherished the company of his peers, the Impressionists, sharing in their rebellion against the conventional art world. His laughter in the cafes of Montmartre was rare but genuine, a momentary escape from the solitary world of his studio. He was a creature of habit, his days structured around the pursuit of art. Yet there was an adventurer in him, one who sought new perspectives in the dance studios, the racetracks, and the streets of Paris. His love for the ballet was not just painted, it was felt, a silent poetry that resonated through his work, revealing a softer side to his otherwise stern persona. His relationships with women were a dance of their own, respectful from a distance, often critical up close. He admired them in his art, giving them grace and form, yet his personal interactions sometimes lacked the warmth his paintings suggested. There was a mystery to him, an enigma wrapped in the folds of his own genius. As the day ended and the night took over, Degas would retreat back into his world of lines, colors, and forms. Here, in the solitude of his craft, his character was laid bare, passionate, meticulous, sometimes haunted by his own high standards. He was a man who lived for art, his heart beating in rhythm with the brushstrokes that defined his life. And so, in this studio where the night whispered secrets to the canvases, Edgar Degas was both the artist and the art, a complex soul whose character was as much a study as the subjects he painted. As Édouard Manet before him, Edgar Degas felt the sting of rejection. The Salon, that grand arbiter of artistic merit, had once again turned away his latest offering. The canvas, vibrant with the life of dancers at rehearsal, was deemed too radical, too different from the accepted norms of beauty and composition. Degas' frustration was palpable, a storm brewing beneath his calm exterior. He paced, his steps echoing the rhythm of his discontent. He had played by their rules, submitted to their judgments, only to be met with closed doors. The Academy's taste was for the safe, the conventional, and Degas, with his keen eye for the truth of light and movement, felt suffocated by these constraints. But the air in Paris was changing, and with it, the winds of artistic rebellion. In smoky cafes where the clink of glasses was the soundtrack to revolution, Degas found kindred spirits. Monet, with his love for the fleeting light, Renoir, who painted the joy of life, Pissarro, the quiet observer of nature, and Cézanne, with his own struggles against tradition. Together they voiced their frustrations, shared their dreams of an art unbound by the Salon's dictates. The idea was born in the haze of cigarette smoke and the clatter of conversation. They would create their own space, their own exhibition. Degas, ever the strategist, took on the role of organizer. He was determined, his passion for art fueling this new venture. They would show the world what modern art could be, free from the shackles of the Academy's approval. The first Impressionist exhibition was a labor of love and defiance. They gathered in the studio of Nadar, the photographer whose own work was a testament to innovation. Here they hung their paintings, not by the rules of the Salon, but by their vision. They invited critics not for approval, but for dialogue. They welcomed the public, not for validation, but for understanding. There was tension, anticipation, and a bit of fear. Would anyone come? Would they be laughed at or lauded? The opening day arrived, and with it a mixture of scorn and curiosity from the public. Degas stood by his works, his dancers now in the spotlight, not of the stage, but of this new art world they were forging. The reviews were mixed, some harsh, but there was also respect, recognition that something new was afoot. Each subsequent exhibition was a statement, a reaffirmation that art could be about capturing life as it was lived, in all its messy, beautiful glory. And so in these exhibitions, Degas found a kind of peace amidst the chaos of creation. His frustration with the Salon didn't vanish, but it transformed into the energy that fueled his art and this collective of artists. They had created a legacy not just for themselves, but for the future of art. In the quiet of his studio, as he prepared for the next show, Degas knew he had helped change the world, one brushstroke at a time. In the waning light of his studio, where shadows stretched long and memories lingered like the scent of old paint, Edgar Degas spent his final days. Time had worn him down, his eyes now dim, his once sharp movements slowed by the weight of years. The world outside Paris had changed, but his world was these walls, these canvases, these sculptures. His studio was a sanctuary, cluttered with the fruits of a lifetime's labor. Pastels lay scattered, their colors still vibrant against the muted hues of time. Sculptures, many of which he had worked on in his later years, stood as silent companions, the little dancer among them, her pose timeless. Degas, once a man of sharp wit and cutting observation, now moved with the caution of one who knew his time was finite. His conversations were fewer, his words more precious. Friends visited, their numbers dwindling, each visit a reminder of the past. They spoke of the Impressionist days, of the battles fought and won, of art that had changed the world. His eyesight, once his greatest ally, now betrayed him, forcing him to rely more on touch than sight. He would feel his way through his work, fingers tracing the lines he could no longer see clearly. Yet even in this limitation there was a kind of beauty, a new way of experiencing his art. The days were quiet, filled with the soft rustle of papers, the gentle tap of a cane. Degas, who had captured so much life, now lived in a quieter rhythm, his mind still vibrant with images of dancers, races, and the myriad scenes of Paris that had fueled his work. He would sit, sometimes for hours in contemplation, his thoughts drifting between the past and the present. As the end drew near, he prepared his legacy. He arranged for his works to be preserved, for his sculptures to be cast in bronze after his death, ensuring that his vision would live on. There was no fear in these final days, only a serene acceptance, a knowing that his journey had been one of passion and persistence. In the silence of his last night, the city outside whispered its eternal song, but within these walls, there was peace. Degas, the artist who had danced with light and shadow, now rested, his art his epitaph, his life a testament to seeing the world through an artist's eyes. And as the dawn broke, marking the beginning of another day, it also marked the end for Edgar Degas, leaving behind a legacy that would dance through time,